Converted man here. Hi, how's it going? Okay, so 36 question for atheists by Adherent Apologetics. This has already been answered or addressed by Bionic Dance, but I might have different answers. Maybe, probably not. But let's do this anyways, because whatever. So, all right, here we go. So I'll link the video I'm responding to and Bionic Dance's video and everything else in the description below once this is no longer live. But in the meantime, that's the video in chat there that I'm responding to. Hello to Reese 2.0, better than Reese 1.0. That Reese wasn't very good, but now it's new and improved. They're in chat. That's why I said hi to them. Okay, so first question is, why is there something rather than nothing? Well, depends what you mean by nothing, but according to Lawrence Krauss, nothing is unstable, and so it will always produce something. So that's why. That's a possible answer. Okay, let's see. Is there any evidence that suggests the universe is eternal? Not that I know of. If not, why do atheists hold on to this idea? Show me atheists that hold on to this idea, because your question is loaded. It assumes that atheists do indeed hold on to that idea. You'd have to demonstrate that atheists do hold on to that idea. As a skeptic, and because I'm a skeptic, I'm an atheist, I do not hold on to that idea. So I'm a counterexample to this claim. You'd have to show, you'd have to then change the question to represent that, say some or most, and you'd have to quantify that with data. Otherwise, your question is loaded, and as such, I reject it out of hand. Debunking the clone. Yeah, it's incoherent, both scientifically and logically. Anything that begins to exist is a universal claim. Cannot make that without knowing about everything. We do not know about everything. That's one problem. Of course, beginning to exist is vague. That's another problem. And then, the sort of begin to that you would need it to apply to, the universe didn't really begin in that sense. This isn't really talking about causality, even though it pretends to talk about causality. At best, we could say that causality is coherent for the universe that we know about, but for the singularity that the universe was, we don't know what that sort of universe would be. So the clone fails on every conceivable measure that it could fail, regardless of any other things that I believe or don't believe in. Why is the universe so fine-tuned? I don't know that it is fine-tuned, and I think that apologists, unfortunately, have taken over fine-tuning and don't understand what the bleep it's referring to, and I don't think that they want to understand what it means, but that would require me to read your mind. So I don't really know why this is a continual trope in apologetics to say fine-tuning. It's not fine-tuned in the way that it would need to be fine-tuned for this question to matter for theism. And as far as the actual fine-tuning, the reason why that's done, this is referring to the precise measurements of the various different variables that scientists have done. This required fine-tuning of that, and the mathematics thereof. You'd have to ask a scientist to explain that better. I'm a logistician, an amateur one at that, so I can't explain that to you. Or maybe just, read some stuff that's not your Bible. That would maybe answer the question of what fine-tuning is. But right now you've asked an incoherent question because fine-tuning isn't what you're suggesting it is. But why is it that way? We don't know. There might not be an answer to the why, but maybe the how is something that we could answer. Why questions are more philosophical in nature and also assume a lot about reality that may or may not be justified. Like, why is that rock there? Because it is. It's there isn't a why. There isn't a why answer to it. You might say, well, it's there so the bear can scratch its back, but ultimately, you don't know. Wow, 28 seconds in. I'm doing great. You can see my forehead. That's it. Yeah, that's what I do. I do that. Here we go. Okay, now you can see my nose. Is that better? All right. Next question. If my answer is the multiverse, my answer is not the multiverse. I don't know. Multiverse is a hypothesis right now. If it turns out to be true, I'm fine with it. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. Is it possible that there is no natural explanation for the origin of life? Boy, that's malformed as a question. I think you should have said, is it possible that there isn't any? No, that still doesn't work. How about there is no, if there was, I don't know. I can't fix that question for you. But I don't know that it's, I don't know that non-natural is even a thing that anything can be in the first place. So without you demonstrating that non-natural is an actual thing that anything can be, this question is loaded because it pre-assumes that non-natural is a thing, and then you say, well, there's no natural explanation for it, and that's the reality of it. Okay, well, how did you arrive to that conclusion, and is that possible? It's only possible if there is something not natural out there somehow, and that would be a burden you would have to prove. So, okay. Where does consciousness come from? Our brain. There you go. Do I lack a belief that God exists? Yes. God does not exist. Would I say that for Yahweh? Yes. Do I lack a belief that Zeus exists? Yes. Or do I believe that Zeus does not exist? Yes, I also believe that Zeus does not exist, as well as lacking a belief in Zeus existing. The two are compatible. If you lack a belief on why Zeus doesn't exist, why your century is behind the world on Zeus, appeal to popularity doesn't mean that Zeus doesn't exist. The fact of the matter is, very few people believe in Zeus anymore, but there's still somebody somewhere. I don't know how many. I know that there's one guy that still believes in something like that, if not Zeus outright. It's awfully close, but lacking a belief in that would be warranted without evidence that it's a thing, and saying that it's not a thing based on the lack of people believing in it would not be a coherent way to arrive at that conclusion. So I object to the phrasing of this question. But nonetheless, I don't believe in Zeus because it has no evidence for it, no tests for it, no demonstration for it, no logically coherent argument for it. Do I act according to what I believe or what I lack a belief in? Yes, both. What evidence is there that atheism corresponds to reality? Did you steal that from Chaka God? Atheism is a position either that you don't believe in God or that there is no God. In either case, both correspond to reality in that it is a statement about your stance, your ideas. One has a burden of proof, the other does not, but regardless, either could correspond to reality in the sense that the person that's saying that is saying, I don't believe that there's a God, or I'm saying there's no God. This is my opinion or what have you, or it's my belief that there is no God, or depending on how the phrasing goes. And that would be real because that's their belief. Now, of course, we could question if that's really their belief or really their stance. But if you wanted to do that, then you'd have to somehow demonstrate that they don't actually believe that. And that would be extraordinarily difficult to do without them agreeing to do some sort of testing involving their brain and neurology and stuff. But if you want to pay for that, I'm happy to do a test to show that, yes, I don't believe in God in my head. And so therefore it corresponds to reality to say that I don't believe in God. And it also would correspond to reality to say that there is no God, at least from my view. Now, whether or not there is actually no God, that's a different story. Is atheism a worldview? No, it's not. If not, what is my worldview? I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest. I've tried a couple times to write down what my worldview would look like. The best I can do is tell you my epistemology, which is empirical evidence, repeatable tests, and a valid and sound argument. If you have any of those or one of those, then I'm going to think that your idea is true. If you do not, I'm going to be skeptical of your idea. What would convince me that God exists? It's not about convincing me. It's about convincing all of humanity simultaneously in a way that none of us could be mistaken about it. Convincing me is a moot point. God could simply levitate the screen of my computer into the air. I've said this many, many times to many believers that if God would do that, I would at least be in belief, but it wouldn't help because I'd still have to check in with reality to make sure I wasn't hallucinated, and I'd have to record it to see it happen. I'd want it to be more than just me. It can't just be me. That's not good enough. If it's going to reveal itself to my satisfaction, it's going to have to do it worldwide all at once in a way that none of us can doubt. And none of us could be mistaken about it. Why wouldn't it do that if it actually cares about us and if it actually wants to know anything about us? Hello, everybody. Hi, Purple Rhymes with Orange and Dave Stewart. And I can come a link. Worldview. Yeah, okay. I'm not reading chat, by the way. I'm looking at his video. So, but I am switching back and forth, everyone in chat. So if you do have a question or direct comment for me, just at DeconvertedManMe, and I will get to it when I look over here. Okay, back to the thing. All right, here we go. Are you willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it leads to a different understanding of how the universe works? Yes, absolutely. Ask yourself, Bernard Russell, ask yourself only, what are the facts and what is the truth that those facts bear out? Now, I mentioned this on my previous live stream where I said, if the actual real God is not your God, then wouldn't you just be stuck thinking that it was some sort of test from your God? You're there, you see the actual God, and that's going to be Blue Sheep, I guess, and then your God, which is Pikachu, and you're like, oh, well, you're a fake God testing me for the real God, but actually they're the real God, and they're not doing a test, and they're trying to convince you to not believe in this, and you're stuck believing in the one that you think is true. So I really think that the theist is in a more, by the way, the Pikachu would actually be the real God. Actually, you know what? The lobster is the real God. Forget about it. But at any rate, you'd be stuck believing that your God was real unless you were open to being wrong about that. And so the question really you should ask yourself is what would convince you that a different God is true? And whatever the answer to that is, that's what you should be presenting to the non-believers, because that might be compelling enough for them to change their mind. If Jesus rose from the dead, would I become a Christian? No. I mean, that'd be kind of cool after all this time. You're talking about like now, like if he rose from the. I mean, I guess it would be worldwide news. I'm not sure how we would know it was Jesus, though. But it would be interesting. If you wouldn't become a Christian, why would you accept the fact that he rose from the dead? And I think Bionic answered this pretty well. The fact of the matter doesn't change whether or not I'm going to adhere to the thing. Jesus rising from the dead, by the way, doesn't prove that anything that he said was true, or nor would it prove that anything in the Bible that talks about Jesus is true. Nor would it prove that Jesus is God. So I'd have a lot of questions for Jesus. And then since I have him to interview, depending on what sort of person he is and depending on what he promotes and doesn't promote, that would allow me to decide whether or not joining with him would be a good or bad idea. But if he's the same sort of person that he's portrayed in the Bible, I probably wouldn't join that group, even though I would know doing that would end in my demise. So be it. I'm going to stick with my ethics and my morals because they're better than his. And he could, now if he's actually God, then he could maybe formulate a coherent argument to convince me otherwise. But he's not here to talk about. So this is kind of hypothetical at this point. Hypothetical? What? You know what? Go to the next question. Why do atheists keep insisting that faith is blind trust when that's not what Christians or the Bible says? Well, actually, you're wrong. Okay. Hebrews 11:1. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the convictions of things not seen. There you go. That's what the Bible says faith is. Things that you hope for, the conviction, the certainty of things unseen. That means if you see it, it can't be faith. That means that if you know it's a thing, then you're not hoping for it, because hope is like, I really hope that our team win. I hope that I get the lotto numbers. It's something that you're projecting that will happen in the future, and that you're counting on it. You're rooting for it. You're like, come on, be this. You're hoping that the dang marble lands on 00 green, which is, I mean, you might as well bet that, because I mean the odds are better than of red and black, but if you're going to bet at all, it's just bet on the one that's going to yield the highest return, because it's all random anyways, unless it's rigged. But yeah, I mean, you're hoping for something, and that hope indicates that you're not sure that it's going to be a thing. And certainly conviction of things not seen indicates that you haven't seen it yet. So that means blind faith. I don't know how you could say it's not blind faith. There's other, okay, let's see, Doubting Thomas. Let's see. So, okay, Jesus talking to Doubting Thomas. He has to, who I played in Cited Atheist videos. Because although I would be a better doubter than Thomas was, he has Thomas poke him and stuff, and he's like, yeah, see, I'm really, really Jesus. And he's like, okay, you are. And then Jesus says to Thomas, because you've seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen yet believe. The Bible encourages blind faith. So to say that it doesn't do that is just an outright lie. It does do that. Now, many Christian apologists don't want to admit that it's just blind faith, but that's because Christian apologists are playing this kind of game of intellectual, that they're trying to justify the belief in some way that seems rational. And really, they're not convincing anybody that's not already a believer. And if they do, I wonder what that percentage would be. Somebody should do a study, but I'm not sure how you would do that. But at any rate, I'm not. So that answers that question. Okay, so why do I want material evidence for a non-material God? Well, I want any evidence at all would be great, but you'd have to demonstrate that non-material is a thing that something can be, and unless and until you do that, I have to be skeptical that that's a thing. But I'm asking for empirical evidence. That is my first one. My second one is repeatable test. Why can't we test this thing? Well, because you can't test God. Okay, how about a valid and sound argument? Which would be all you could possibly have at that point. But I'm pretty sure that without any sort of substance, it would be extraordinarily hard to construct a logical argument for a thing that lacked any empirical testable thing to it. With a few exceptions like mathematics and numbers and letters and things like this. But a lot of that relies on axioms, and ultimately you have to admit that those things don't exist out here. They exist only in the brain. And I'm okay. God exists in the brain as an idea, as a concept, as a construct, as a meme. But as anything else, that hasn't been demonstrated. The idea of something that exists without substance is equivalent to not existing. The only the numbers 5 and 1 and whatever other, or ich ni sancho or uno dos tres cuatro cinco, all of that is abstraction of the brain. And if we didn't have brains that could conceive of those words, the idea wouldn't be. There'd still be units of things in the universe, despite there not being anyone to label it, but there would be no number one, because the number one only exists because brains exist. And so similarly, when a religion dies off and the people that believed in it die off, and if it's lost to history, it doesn't come back. That's it. It's done. Now maybe by coincidence, a religion might come that was identical to it, although I think the chances of that would be relatively low, but who knows, it depends. And then maybe you find the old religion again, and the religion that's pretty close to it would be like, hey, this proves our thing or something, but once the people of the thing are gone, the idea tends to go away. Although gods are something that people generate on their own, and in group settings. Look at the cargo cults, for example. Here's a bunch of people that worship cargo falling from the sky. There's also things to do with pilots, that they'll worship pilots and pictures of pilots because they're the ones that drop the cargo. And even though the cargo isn't dropping anymore, they'll go and wait for the cargo. So things like this are indications that humans are extraordinarily good pattern-seeking creatures, but also that's a flaw in a sense, because we see patterns even when there isn't a pattern there. We just think that there's a pattern. And, if you get used to something happening, then you might be upset when it doesn't happen. And, so on and so forth. But, yeah, I think that answers that question. Wow. Is there, wow, man, he goes fast. Is there a purpose to life? I don't, depend. I mean, objectively speaking, reproduce and continue to live. If there is, by what standard do I use to determine that life has purpose? The objective standard would be through biology and science. The whole thing that life wants to do is continue to living. You know what I said. And to procreate or to create more of itself. That seems to be its only thing. Now, if it doesn't do that, then it stops being alive. So then that's the end of that story. So that's how I would determine that it's the purpose in that sense. But I think that as far as your purpose, my purpose, whoever's purpose, that's up to each and every one of us to decide. And what's great about being a free thinker, removed from this religion and restrained from free thought, is that I get to choose my purpose every moment of every second of every day. Like right now, my purpose is to make this live video response. But after I'm done with it, it will be to do something else, And right now, maybe it's to lift up this almost said purple cup. Yeah, this purple cup. See this? Man, I'm getting bad as what's his face that held up a banana and called it an apple. Who was that guy, anyways? I know him. I guess his name will come up in Christmas time, somewhere when it's Noel, and I'll eat a plum and I'll remember. But anyways, at any rate, what was I talking about? Yeah, so purpose is yours to decide, moment to moment, day to day, and that yes, it's subjective, but so what? What's the point of listening to this video? I don't know. I mean, what's the point of doing anything, really? It's fun. It's interesting. It's a hobby. It's just a weird question. Like, sometimes you do stuff that has no point to it, like, but, sometimes the things you do have points to it. It just depends, What's the point of doing arbitrary actions like beep? What's the point of that? There is none. I don't know. So I don't know. You're looking for points and purpose to things that may not have points and purpose to them. Like, for example, in your video, your closet door is open, or maybe you don't have a door, and that really bothers me. I wish you'd close it. So what's the point of leaving it open? Just to annoy me? Oh, probably not. Maybe you just don't have a door or didn't close it. So there's no point in either way. Where does morality come from? Ethics. How do you determine what's right and wrong? Ethics. Depending on your ethical system, you'll have different answers to the questions. When a lion kills a cub from another pride, is that morally acceptable? Depends on what ethics lions adhere to. If evolution has put morality into us, what makes our actions better than other animals? I mean, it's a clunky way to say it, but and it also suggests an appeal to consequence, like if evolution did do that, whether you like that or not. But regardless, our actions are different than other animals in the sense that we can use tools. And because we can use tools, we can shape our environment to fit us rather than having to adapt to the environment. Now, that's going to have a consequence in the long term because people are going to and have been evolving to the environment that we've created rather than nature itself. So who knows, if you had a group of people that live in nature versus those that live in a city for however many, thousands of years, you'd have very different people eventually because they're both going to keep evolving because that's what we do. But to suggest that our animal selves are more important to us than other animals, broadly speaking, because we are the thing that we are, and so we're going to be tribalistic in that sense. But in a more deep sort of like what makes us better than other animals, there really isn't a thing that makes us better or worse. I suppose you could say more intelligent or more adept, more able to understand things than other creatures. And I think that there's a way to develop an ethical structure based on observation of reality that could get you a very good moral code. And I think a lot of people are trying to work on that. What that eventually will look like, I don't know yet until they're done with that particular formulation. Until then, I'll use the ethical structure I currently have. But at any rate, I don't know that anything is better than or worse than anything. How would you quantify that? And why what about other living things like trees and bugs and bacteria and viruses? You know, why only include them? I mean, you know, there doesn't seem to be any intrinsic uh, thing about humanity that makes it immune from the things that kill other living creatures and plants and so on. You know, if there's a God that made us, it certainly didn't make us in a way that would make us immune to other things out there. So it doesn't seem like God places that much value on us either. So either way, whether there's a God or not, you're kind of screwed. But lobsters are the best one. Is it morally acceptable for me to kill a toddler because you can no longer financially support it? It depends if Pascal's baby wager is valid or not. So I will now self-promote a video I did called Pascal's Baby. And if he wants to refute that, then he's welcome to do it. If he can't refute it, then yes, it's absolutely moral to kill the baby. It doesn't matter. We should just be killing babies left and right if the Pascal's baby wager is valid. So he'd have to show that it isn't valid, which would also mean the Pascal's wager would be invalid. But as far as killing a thing because you can't support it, in and of itself, because of my ethical system, the answer would probably be no, because there's another alternative solution. Give it up for adoption. But if you're somewhere where there is no adoption, if there's somewhere where the chances of survival are low or none, you know, you know, it depends on the situation, but there might be a time and place where ending a life is less horrible than having it continue to exist. But that would be outside of your question and into kind of a thought experiment area. But if I'm in the society that I'm in now, according to my ethics, no, you shouldn't kill a toddler just because you don't have money. You should probably see if you can get help getting money, get help raising it, or just give it up for adoption. Is it morally acceptable to kill a fetus in the womb because you can't financially support it? Well, I don't know how it would work. I mean, if you can't financially support the fetus, I don't know that you're even eating at that point. So it might die just from lack of food. But you might be eating because food is easier to come by than finances. But nonetheless, again, if this is your only reason to end the life of a fetus, that might not be a very good reason. And depending on your ethical standards, you might have to think about that. So again, I'm going to self-promote myself and suggest that this guy watch my video on ethics and abortion that goes into every single ethical system and then talks about abortion. Now, some of those ethical systems I don't understand, so I, did my best, but, it's a complicated question. Now, if you don't like abortion, and I don't think anyone does, then what we should do is work on ways of avoiding it being an answer to a problem. And the problem is that people like to have sex, but do not like the consequence of sex. Okay? And so if we could turn off the reproductive system in a safe way, then that would remove that problem. assuming we could turn it on again when it's desired to have it be on. So if that was something that women could literally turn on or off, and nobody else could but them, then they wouldn't even have the problem of having the unwanted child in the first place. But if you get into a situation where your future seems bleak and the area you live in is a terrible area, and you think, man, what sort of life would this child have? I can't give them that life. Wouldn't it be better for them not to exist than to exist? And it's a very difficult question, and some have answered it in the negative. And because of that, we have less crime, we have less humans and whatnot. But again, if you want to make it so that it doesn't have to happen in the first place, then you're actually going to have to address the reasons that it happens. Lack of resources, and again, technology and advancements in technology and biotechnology that could negate having a kid in the first place. Or hell, put some money into research that finds a way to remove a fetus from a womb safely and put it in an artificial womb if the woman doesn't want it. But are you Christians going to go out there and do that? Well, what we've seen, say, during the Bush administration, it was said no to do stem cell research. Now it's kind of some of it's allowed because of Clinton, but not. I don't know. There's a lot of it still not allowed, and there's still all these funky loopholes and that you have to jump through. That's a holding back of progress. So that tends to happen from religions and not from secular things. It tends to be that the push for science to be able to control our birth ability in the first place is something that it's like, oh, no, don't do that, you're playing God or something. And the Catholic Church, for example, is extraordinarily against contraceptives. So if you really don't like abortion, put your money where your mouth is, and support things that could advance technology, biochemistry, biotechnology, that would make it possible for us not to have the problem in the first place. Is it morally acceptable to kill a baby after it's been born? Yes, if Pascal's wager baby is true, then yes. If not, then no. But they are delicious. Are you talking about human babies, or are you talking about like other babies? Like human babies? No. Unless they taste good. I don't know. I haven't eaten one yet today. So, but no, not in our society, not according to my ethics. And even if you just had, basic legal standards as your ethical framework, you would have to say no to that. But again, it would depend on your ethics. So, yeah. How can you differentiate between a baby born at 6 months and a baby in the womb 6 months? I don't know. This is the abortion question of when it's okay to abort and when it's not is something that is beyond my particular ability to make any sort of argument for. All I can do is say that the consequence of not allowing abortion to be legal is greater than the consequence of allowing abortion to be legal. And if we don't want abortion to be a thing, the only thing that we can do is to research and develop things that would turn off our reproductive system in a safe way, and that we could also turn it back on in a safe way that nobody but us could control, and that would be a potential solution to the issue at hand. But unless we address the reasons that abortion takes place, we must allow it, whether we like it or not. And once the baby is outside the womb, then there's a different value placed upon it than when it's in the womb. And why is that the case? That's just how people have decided to do it. There really isn't a better explanation than that. Sometimes laws and values are not really made on as sound arguments as I'd like personally. But maybe you could formulate an argument one way or the other for it. Who was Jesus? Some guy from Mexico? You know, you're talking about Jesus of the Bible, a fictional mythological character. If you're talking about like a historical Jesus, I don't know, because whoever that person is lost to history. Why does his disciples say that he rose from the dead? It's a story. It didn't happen. His disciples didn't say anything. That's one answer. His disciples were wrong is another answer. All it takes is for one disciple or even somebody else to say, no, I saw Jesus alive, and for somebody else to say, yes, yes, I did as well. And then people will start to agree with it and even maybe claim that they saw it. This is group think. And also, if you had a long-standing belief and then, you know, the worst happened, it would be easier to believe that, you know, to deny it than to think it's true. There's many multiple reasons that these people could have said this, but ultimately it assumes that the story is true, and that's too far for me. You haven't proven that the story is true, so you have to do that. That's your burden to bear, and until you've done that, the disciples didn't say diddly or squat. Everything written is just made up by somebody. Why does the Bible keep lining up with archaeology? What archaeology? The best that you've got in archaeology, as far as the Bible goes, is a handful of cities and a few kings. There's way more in archaeology that's against the Bible than there is for it. But if you think something lines up, then present that as a video. Forget about questions. I want to see the archaeological evidence that shows that's actually been verified by archaeologists that aren't just all Christians, and show how, yes, this means something, you know. And in fact, the best you can do is some locations and some kings, like I suspect is all you've got. That's not going to be very compelling. But if you think that it does, then show it. Don't just say that it does. So, loaded question. Why do the Why do the three Bolivia regimes, Maoist China, what else do you say? Nazi Germany and Stalin's Russia come from atheist regimes? Really, I mean, even Matt Slick knew enough to not use the Nazis because they had ties with the Catholic Church. Their belt buckle said something about God. They were all about God. They weren't an atheist anything. The other two, even if you can say to some extent why, because they said no to God, they said that you're not allowed to believe in God anymore, and that's what makes them atheistic or something. It's a very, very difficult argument to make. And then as far as the bloodiest, well, you know, how are you, you know, is it amount of people killed? You know, what, you know, this is, and ultimately the amount of damage done by anything or the amount of good done by anything doesn't make it true. That's the biggest fallacy. Well, not the biggest fallacy, but that's a pretty big fallacy that you're making by the question, is the implicit idea that, well, the atheist regimes have been more bloody than the theist regimes. Even if you add up all the theist regimes, you guys are way more death toll. So what? That makes you wrong? No, it doesn't, because you guys still killed people. So, oh, well, but you killed more. So it doesn't make anything false or true by, you know, counting numbers in that way. And to suggest otherwise is just incoherent. Okay, now to look at chat. Oh my god. So that was all the questions answered. I didn't, it took me 44 minutes to answer a 2-minute 59-second video. Not too bad, actually. Let's see. Let me go back and chat. Oh, I don't know where to go. Let's see. I see some oranges that I need to respond to. Let's see. What's your take on Reese 2.0 asks? Hold on. I'm going to have to clear my throat here. Oh, my. What's my take on high impact hypnosis? Wait, high impact, huh? I.e., what? I have no idea what the bleep this is. So I have to look up what the bleep you're talking about. Let's see. High impact. Come on, Google, do your thing. Oh, hypothesized ancient. Okay, Theta, a hypothesized ancient planet in the early solar system that, according to the giant impact hypothesis, collided with Gaia, and that's what formed the moon. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I've not heard of that particular hypothesis. So, but that's beyond my field. I mean, there is some evidence, I think, to support that something hit the Earth and made the moon. So I don't know how big it would have to be to do that, and I don't know if that's a sound hypothesis or not. It's just you'd have to ask a scientist. It's beyond my field, you know. But so that's the best I can answer that question. And Purple said it was an excellent way to put whatever I said whenever he said that. So okay, let's see. I don't need to accept a biblical definition of faith. Beast says, yeah, in reference to the faith question, like, well, why is it you keep insisting that faith is this when we're telling you faith is that? Well, you can tell me what you think faith is, and then I'll point out how it's still flawed or it's an equivocation. So ultimately, I will argue your definition of faith, whatever your definition of faith is. I just find it interesting that Christians don't even know what their own Bible says about faith. And it's usually apologists. It's not the mundane Christian doesn't, have a problem with that. It seems. Well, that's broadly speaking. Let's see. Let's see. Still talking about the planet. Let's see. We've all seen Lion King. What? Okay. Nature doesn't have ethics. Well, I would object to that in the sense that we are of nature. We're part of nature. So in that way, nature does have ethics because we are naturals. So, but if you mean like nature, then yeah. Ethics arrive out of our desire for the survival of trade. Sounds racist? No. Tribalism is very much what promotes a lot of early morals and ethics. So it might indeed sound tribal or well, I don't know about racist because tribalism isn't necessarily dependent upon one's skin color, and I don't understand why we call that race. Because the only race is human race as far as that goes, but whatever, it's a whole other thing there. The foundation of all ethics is the fact that all beings die. I don't know that that's the foundation of all ethics, but it might be. In any ethical question, you can theorize a situation where either option seems correct. I mean, it depends on the ethical system, I think. There's ones that have more wiggle room than others. It just depends which one you're talking about. Let's see. Let's see. Is answering the same questions Bionic Dan? Yeah, I'm addressing the same video that Bionic Dancer already addressed. But I wanted to do it because, I got nothing else going on. So. Plus, maybe she'll see me and pay attention to me, and I'll be noticed by senpai. That would be cool. Anyways, whoa, 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 whoa! I screwed my chat reading up. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. YouTube notifications suck. Yeah. V equal. I don't know. They're trying to link some video. I guess Andrew was. Atheism is with us. Yeah. God is with us, right? That's the thing that their belt buckle said. God means atheism. Yeah, that would be kind of weird. Like, atheism is with us. Kill in the name of atheism. What? Why? I want you to suicide bomb. No. There's nothing after what? After, no, I'll be dead. But then, you know. Let's see. Let's see. But she's a lesbian, man. I don't care. Anyways, so yeah, I caught up with chat finally. Thanks for watching and listening to me answer these questions. The guy that made this probably will not watch this. I doubt he'll watch Biotics answers or respond to any of the answers at all. This is just something that apologists seem to like to do. Put out questions and then ignore the answers. S.J. Thomason did it. You know, she's ignored my answers, and so far she's ignored Noel Plum's answers. That was the name of the guy I was trying to think of. Yeah, I made a joke earlier that I couldn't remember. Yeah, but yeah, Kate is really cool. I like her. I know. It's, look, the heart wants what the heart wants, okay? It doesn't have to make logical sense. But that's the only thing that doesn't have to make logical sense. Everything else has to make logical sense. And that sentence is immune from special pleading. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I could outsmart it. Yeah. All right, so knocked my own lamp there. Thanks for whatever this was, and if you have questions for the skeptic, by the way, why doesn't anyone do that? Like, questions for skeptics. It's always the atheist. I mean, technically, I'm an atheist, but I just want to see some change. You know, questions for agnostics, like, why are you on the fence? You know, what's up with that? By the way, the agnostics are completely fucked if they're like, and it's you know, it's like you're really worse off because you're on the fence. Like, I'll spit you out of my mouth. So that's like so God puts the agnostics in his mouth and then spits them out, I'm guessing, straight into hell. Whereas the atheist just goes to hell. So I guess that's an argument for being an atheist, because then you don't get the, but then again, you might like being in God's mouth. Does God have a mouth? Well, if it talks, it must have a mouth, but then that means it has a physical form. But then that means God is natural. But God isn't natural, which means it can't have. How does any of this work again? Oh, lukewarm Christians, right? Whatever. I don't know. I can't remember half the stuff I used to know about the Bible, and I don't care anymore. All right, so I'm done. Thanks for the lobsters, and unless we didn't have anything for this particular video because he was just asking questions. I really wish that these apologists would get a atheist or a skeptic or a agnostic or whatever the label is to answer questions. Now, everyone's questions or answers are going to be a little bit different. Maybe there's some similarities there, but don't mistake that for it being a worldview, because atheism isn't one. And it's interesting that it seems like maybe apologists are finally starting to accept this. But as I say this, I've just read a thing where the guy just is tripping off of the fact that atheism isn't a worldview. He keeps wanting Frank Turek. He's like, oh, it's just, I don't know. List of questions from atheists for atheists as an atheist. Yeah, that'd be interesting too. I'd check that. I wish they'd actually read or listen to responses. Yeah, but then they'd have to update the questions. And it's easy to make loaded I'm almost done. I thought I was done. I'm not quite done. Wow, I've got 7 people. That's great. All right. It's easy to form a question that cannot be answered. Anyone could do that. I don't know really. I don't want to say there's no point in that, but it seems rather mundane to do it. You can formulate, what is God made out of? Now, some might have an answer to that, but some would reject to the question and say, well, God isn't made out of things because God is a non-thing. It is a thing that is made out of itself, but and it's not made, and it's not the same category or something. It's a very strange answer, by the way, that's given for what's God made out of, because there's a lot of mental hoops they have to jump through to answer it, because you can't say God's made out of nothing, because that doesn't make sense. But they'll say something like God is simple, it's made out of itself, which doesn't really answer the question, which is the whole point. It's how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? It can't. There's many questions that no one can really answer, and it doesn't really prove anything. And of course, if the question is loaded, then you can't answer it. Anyways, team up with Rev Jr. I don't know who that is, but send them my way, I guess. I don't know. Let them know who I am, because I don't know who they are. But what color as the lizard men of Pluto? Wow, Andrew. Not only can I not answer that question, but I can't even understand that question. So good job. Let's all just read it again and make fun of Andrew a little bit here. What color as the lizard men of Pluto? Did you mean what color are the lizard men of Pluto? But you wrote as. Ha 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 ha. Okay, anyways. I never make my mistake. I only sometimes make mistakes. I look like Rev Jr. I don't know who that is, so okay. But I'm not a redhead. Okay. I don't know what you guys are talking about anymore. And gals and robots. When I say guys, I usually mean all the things, but I try to spice it up a bit. So yeah, remember, if all else fails, what color R is of the? Yes, the purple. The purple cup is the answer. I'm a dude. Look, I don't. It's all good. You can be whatever you want. It's fine. It's okay. So that's it for this time. Blah 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 blah. Meow meow meow. Blah blah. Meow. Yeah. That was lobsters.